Hello and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show, the only podcast in real estate investing that teaches what you need to know to find and flip deals right now. Wow. Break free the chains that are holding you back and join us on this episode with Jason Lucchese.
Hey, what's up? It's Jason Lucchese, and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show. I am so excited that you are here with us today. We've been covering a ton of great content on our previous episodes, and on this episode here today, I've got my good friend, Mr. Chris Chico, joining us, and he's going to be covering something that we have not discussed on any No Flipping Excuses episodes, and this is going to be a really hot topic. I'm not going to spill the beans just yet, because some folks may not know you, Chris. So, Chris, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am shivering here in South Florida.
Oh,
I think we're going to have lows of 65 degrees. And so I've got my space heater in my office here, ready to go.
Oh man, Chris, I would love. We should trade spots for 2 minutes. I'm sure you'd probably change your tune in a quick second there, because it's probably in the what, Mike? Where are we at today for temperature? Low 30s, high 20s. Oh, it's 25 degrees, Chris.
Oh,
so if you want to switch, let me know.
There must be people dying on the streets where you are.
It is pretty bone chilling out there, man.
Yes.
Hey, dude, for folks that don't know you, I know you've been in this space, you've been in this game for a really, really long time. And first of all, thanks for coming on the show, man. I know we've been
thanks for the
trying
invite.
to,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, trying to get you on the show here. You were one of the original people that I first started, following when I first got started in the business, and you've been doing this for a long, long time. So Chris, just kind of let people know who you are and what you're all about, man.
Yeah, I mean, I started. The shortened version of that story is that I started real estate as an agent really long time ago in the late 1990s, early 2000s. I was a real estate agent for selling REO properties. So that was kind of how I kind of started to begin my journey into like the investing world. And then I worked there was a particular investor that was buying most of my deals as an REO agent. I had the good fortune of him saying, "Hey, why don't you come with me and I'll teach you the business?" So I went underneath him for about a year, learned the business. And then, like everybody else, just started to do it on their own.
Yeah.
And for me, back then, everybody was buying deals off the MLS. And so I figured, hey, let me go out and see if I could figure out a way to find sellers without going through the MLS. And that was kind of my journey into learning direct response marketing, et cetera. So I'm known more as like the direct mail guy. A lot of the postcards that you and I were talking before the show, I go on these different websites where they have the postcards that you can use as a real estate investor. And like literally I was on one the other day and I'm like, okay, that's my card. That one's a little bit like my card, et cetera. And so that was like my claim to fame. I used that. And then the market here in South Florida began to get a little bit tight, but I noticed that other people in other parts of the country were still doing well, even though here in the South Florida market, things were not that great. And so then I started to kind of figure out and test and figure out a way that, hey, how can I go out to other markets and wholesale properties? And that was, I think, back in 2007 or 8, when I first created the concept of virtual wholesaling. Yeah. So I'm also known for creating, that term and that kind of genre of real estate investing. And, I think that I've had the good fortune that as the market shifts and as things change, just always coming up with the different marketing ways of finding motivated sellers, because whatever works today may not work, a year from now, 2 years from now. And that's kind of what led me down the path of what we're going to be talking about here today, which is the Facebook.
Yep.
Because I think the realization for me came when, obviously I was going to my UPS store to go and pick up mail that was coming back, return mail. And there was a couple other investors in there. And I was looking at the fact that, hey, we're all mailing the same postcards. And I would talk to sellers and they would say, hey, I've got 4 or 5 or 6 other postcards here from other real estate investors. And, I always think about my mom and my mother-in-law who, before, for them, like they have smartphones now. and they're online. So we used to think that, oh, our customers are older folks, they're not online, we're not going to worry about that, but everybody's online. My mom thinks Facebook is the internet. I mean, that's the reality of it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that's what kind of led me down the path of figuring, trying to figure out the online game of what we're going to be discussing here.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about direct mail and stuff that may work yesterday may not work today, and that's why I really wanted to get you on the show, because you've been a pioneer with several different types of marketing strategies over the years. And I remember using a lot of your direct mail pieces and then working better than any other pieces out there. And I've seen, over the past year or so, some of the stuff that you've been doing, not just by yourself, but with, some of your students as well, just having like phenomenal success when it comes to Facebook. And at the end of the day, Facebook, you're doing stuff that has nothing to do with, posting selfies at the gym or posting your maybe like a dessert that you had at dinner. You're doing something from a business standpoint. And let's kind of hop into that, man, because I think a lot of people want to hear about that and know about it. So tell us, Facebook, it's more than just a social networking platform. It's so much more than that. And I would love for you to touch on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the couple quick things. The reason why, obviously I knew that I needed to go online for finding motivated sellers. And so the options were kind of also somewhat limited, because it was either SEO, and SEO is search engine optimization, where you build a site and you get it ranked on Google, but that was going to take forever. Right. And I'm a fairly impatient guy. So that one did not match my criteria. The other one that some people are familiar with is Google pay-per-click, where you go on Google, you type in, sell my house fast, and then now different ads show up. And for me, that was a possibility. However, the challenge with that is that that's as with any opportunity, at the beginning, you get in on the beginning, and then as more and more people get in there, then costs go up. And so, in PPC, pay-per-click, it's not uncommon to find that it's going to cost you like, $30 to $40 to $50 a click, and to spend, $300 a lead. And so I thought, for me, that seemed a little bit risque, right? For me to go in and try to figure that out when there's other people doing that. Sure. And so, the last one was Facebook, and I saw the opportunity with Facebook because, I looked at a lot of the different forums, and most people were saying that, yeah, I tried it and it didn't work. And I've done Facebook before for my education business, and I set out to see if I could figure that out. So kind of like my first, and as I'm talking to you, I made some notes just to make sure I didn't forget anything. So one of the things that I did is that I did what most of us are taught in the online world, is that when you're going into something new like this, why not just copy what everybody else is doing? Because then I will shortcut the process. And I did that. And looking at what other real estate investors are doing, how they're advertising. And I tried that route, and I spent a couple $1,000s on ads and really didn't get anywhere. And so what I went back to, and I said, well, let me think about how I was advertising in direct mail, and how can I take some of those principles in direct mail and approach it to what we're doing on Facebook.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the framework that I came up with. So one of the things that I realized first was, the first step is figuring out how to come across on Facebook. So when I looked at other real estate investors, how they were advertising because, again, I'm looking at, when I created my postcards, I look at what everybody else is doing, and I saw that everybody was sending out We Buy Houses postcards. And I said, if I send out anything that looks like this, it's just going to go in the pie with everybody else.
Right.
So the same thing happened when I looked at Facebook. I saw all these guys advertising, We Buy Houses cash, XYZ company, sell your home for cash, using stock photos and images. And then I said, and then one of the things that worked in the education business in terms of how we advertise on Facebook was that instead of saying, hey, Chris Chico, virtual wholesaling, I would come across as an individual. So one of the first things that I did and I tested, which worked, is that instead of coming across as that, say, XYZ company, sell your house fast, I created a persona on Facebook of Chris Buys Houses. Okay. So then now it's personal, not corporate. And instead of having a picture of a house that little shows up on your news feed, right? Because that's what shows up if you're advertising. It was a picture of me as an individual, Chris Buys Houses. right? So then now as somebody is scrolling through, if you're scrolling through Facebook and you see something that looks like an ad, most people are going to skip it or rather quickly, just continue to scroll through. But, many times on Facebook, it's just about if that user is on Facebook, just slowing them down just enough for them to, just to pause a little bit helps. So in that perspective, it looks like a regular news feed that you're looking through your friends, right? Because it says Chris buys houses. So that was the first thing that I did was just
That's
coming
clever.
across personal. And, also you think about this. Yes, for most real estate investors, unlike a big outfit like say Homevestors who's trying to build a brand, for us as individuals, as best you can, trying to build a branded company in the house buying space, it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. And even if you had that, regardless, the customer at the end is always going to do business with you. They're doing business because they know, they like you, they trust you, etc. And so that was the whole purpose of that, is that I'm going to come across as an individual. Chris, I'm buying houses in the area, etc. And so that was like the first thing that I did to help us, to help me get success and have a little bit more traction. So when you're advertising, so the advice here is that if you're advertising on Facebook, create a page that says, Jason buys houses, or Jason buys houses in whatever market you want. And then have that page be personal. Have the little round picture that shows up on the business page be your face. Populate the page with images of you, of your family. Make it personal, so now that's easier for you to develop that personal connection with the customer. Then now the next stage is targeting. So targeting, the way Facebook works is that you say, I want to buy houses in my county, Broward County, Florida. And so I'm going to try to feed into Facebook information and data to try to narrow that audience. So example would be, and the way that Facebook works is that Facebook tracks a lot of data, not necessarily just the data that's on your phone by you searching the app, but when you're going from different websites across the internet, the Facebook pixel is on there, meaning that they know if I jump from Facebook and go to Zillow and go to Bank of America to refinance my loan, they get all that information, they grab it. So in Facebook, as an advertiser, you can go in and you can put all these different interests. I want somebody who visits Zillow. I want somebody who visited a home refinance site, etc. So in the beginning, that's what I did. And there's a particular interest targeting called likely to move, right? So I went ahead and I pushed all those interests into Facebook, and I said, let me target the entire county and do that. And so when I did that, though, however, that didn't work. I was spending money and not getting anywhere. And so then I thought to myself, okay, well, how is it that we would normally do this with direct mail? We just wouldn't target the entire county. What we would do is we target each individual zip code. And the way that we would target those zip codes is that we would say, pull a list of cash buyers that recently purchased, and we would have a ranking of which zip code. So I said, well, let me focus on the zip codes because this just isn't working. So then what we ended up figuring out is that we ended up targeting only like the top 5 zip codes that we know that we would normally mail to, but we're targeting those zip codes only as opposed to the entire county. Now, when we did that, what we also did is we said, okay, let's put in all those other demographics that we were putting in, somebody who visited Zillow, somebody likely to move. Now, the challenge we had with that is that, when we targeted the whole county, we may have 600,000 people. So we can put all those interests in there and then come up with a smaller number, 50,000, 60,000 people that we can target. But if you're by zip code level, then that's difficult because now you're only going to have like a couple thousand people. And that's too small of a group. So through a lot of trial and error, what we figured out is that our best targeting comes from just from the zip code. So we focus on that particular zip code. And we also put in the age of 35 to 65. Because an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old likely isn't going to have a house. If you look at your demographics of the people that you're buying houses from, typically they're from 35 on. So what we did is we figured out that our best results come not from putting all these different attributes into Facebook, but rather just saying what's the zip code that we want to target and what's the age group. And now for most, now we get a range of people that we're now serving our ad that is generally somewhere between, 20,000 to 50,000 or so people on the high end, but that's a lot more manageable, right? So now we're targeting strictly on the zip codes. And again, my second recommendation is don't focus on, if you're going to do Facebook ads, don't say I'm going to target the whole county. Figure out what are the zip codes that you would do direct mail, and focus on those first. And then the other thing that we did was, in direct mail, when you do direct mail, the more personalized you can make the postcard, the better the results, right? So when I first started direct mail, instead of doing a generic "We Buy Houses Cash," it would have the name of the individual on the postcard. It would have their address on the postcard, right? So again, nowadays that's common, but when I started, that wasn't common, and that increased our results. So that was my other thinking. Well, how can we make the ad more personalized? So the way we make the ad more personalized and have it be more effective is that we actually go in and we go to that zip code, and we go to Google, and we take an image, a screenshot of that neighborhood in Google, right? So now, and so now we're showing, that prospect is seeing me, Chris Buys Houses, right? They're seeing an image of the neighborhood, right? Exact neighborhood where the zip code is located. So now, and then in addition to that, then what we do is we put a little sign on the right-hand corner of the image that says, like, for example, let's sell your 33147 property. So what it looks like, and it's funny because some people will message on the ad, say, I can't believe that you're littering the neighborhood with these signs all over the place.
I know, I've seen them.
Yeah. But it's really just a picture of the neighborhood and a pole on the right side. We get a nice picture, and then we create a sign that says,
That's so awesome.
I buy houses, and it has a zip code, right? So then now, we're targeting the zip code. We have a sign that says the zip code, right? And then the last final thing is that rather than coming across as sell your house for cash, I'll make you a cash offer, etc. All the ads are very conversational. Hey, my name is Chris, and I just sold a couple properties, and I need to buy another couple houses for me to fix up, for buy and fix up. And I love to buy something in zip code 33142 because I already have people working there in that area. So it's easy for me. So not saying that that's exact verbiage of the ad, but if you get the drift, is rather than coming across as a company, now it's like this conversational. So you have I always say that it's never one thing, right? It's always a stacking of things come together. So if you think about it, we have the Facebook business page that comes across as Chris Buys Houses. So that's coming in personal nature.
Yep.
We then further narrow down, and we're only targeting those zip codes that we know we can typically find deals in, the neighborhood to have the older houses, etc. And then on top of that, now we're making an image that is custom made for that particular zip code. And then we're coming across in a very conversational way. And so that's the reason why now, so all that is very much counterintuitive and completely different than what other people were doing on Facebook. And so then now, the way from the targeting and the cost perspective, we then, our targeting is, the budget for that is $15 to $20 per zip code, right, per day. Right. So you're not going to go out and try to do this across 10 zip codes. But when you start out, you can just spend $15 to $20 on that particular zip code per day. And generally speaking, on average, depends on the area, the cost per lead is somewhere between $10 to $15 to sometimes as much as $30.
Jeez.
But that's kind of the range that we're getting on that.
That's
and
awesome.
The general rule of thumb I give people is how much money. People say, well, how much would it cost me to get a deal? I'm not saying that, hey, you can spend $20 on Facebook today and find a deal. That would be further from the truth. But I look at it as, how much money would you have to give to Facebook in order for you to have a chance of making this work? And my general rule of thumb is, you got to give it on the low end $750 to $1,500, in order to be able to have a chance of getting in enough leads, because it's all a numbers game, right? And that obviously, you got to be good on the phone. You got to know how to, do property analysis. You got to have the buyer's list. You got to have all that stuff in place. But generally speaking, we're looking at pulling leads for about $15 on some markets. In South Florida, we spend about, $25 to $30 a lead. But it's still a lot less expensive than if I was going to go ahead and do Google pay-per-click, which is what I was considering in the beginning. And then the final aspect of it is, with Facebook, what we have figured out is, rather than putting together a website, you do need a website, but everybody should have a website for credibility purposes. Meaning if I say, hey, my name is Chris, and if I just say, hey, you can go to chrisbuysHouses.com, or you can go to, sellyourfloridaHomeToday.com, at least it gives you credibility. So you need a website just to provide Facebook a privacy policy link, right?
Gotcha.
When you're setting this up. But what we're using is Facebook's own internal lead forms, which is basically, rather than somebody clicking on your ad and then going to another website, which now you have to contend with, well, gee, is the landing page correct? Do I have everything set up and everything else? What we're doing is just the moment the person clicks on the link, it opens up right inside of Facebook. It's already pre-populated with a phone number, their email address. All they got to put in their property address, hit the button, and that gets sent over to us automatically as a lead.
That's awesome.
And then they're still on Facebook. So it also not as complicated as, say, Google, where you need a landing page, you need to optimize. There's a lot of things that go into that. And that really is the strategy in a nutshell. I mean, it's really about just having the right approach, the right focus approach. And then, the benefit again with Facebook is that they have things in their system that allow us to do it without getting too complicated.
Man, that's a brilliant strategy, and you explained it in detail for people to just actually go and probably test it. And I'm sure there's a lot of different ad copy variations to do in order for people to click and whatnot, which we could talk about here at the end of the show on people being able to utilize that for what you're doing now, Chris. But gosh, that is a great strategy, because you're pulling the top 5 zip codes, because, we do it. We pull the top 5 zip codes of where people are mostly buying properties for cash, and those are our target areas. And the great thing about this is, you mentioned early on, you coined the phrase for virtual wholesaling, and you could do this virtually too, which is awesome. You could do this from practically any market in the entire country, and you could be from any country or any country in the world, which is awesome.
Yes. Well, we actually I forgot about that, because we also figured out the buyers. So with the sellers, typically I mentioned the price that we pay per lead. With buyers, buyers is a little bit different. Buyers are still coming across as a personal individual.
Yep.
However, though, with the buyers, we target a group of zip codes together, which is different than the sellers. Because with the buyers, we layer in interests such as real estate investor, real estate investing, real estate broker, real estate agent. So for buyers, it's actually the opposite. And I've had many students that were able to go ahead and run ads for sellers, find a seller, and they were able to take and run ads for buyers, and they found the buyer for the same deal through the seller. So it's exactly what you mentioned, in that you can go into any market of the country and be able to pull buyers and sellers simultaneously using Facebook.
That is awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah, I've seen some of your students. They've had $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 plus checks that they've put, and you've shared it on your Facebook. And I'm just like, geez, this is such a great strategy, especially for the cost that you're looking at. Because I would, recommend to people that are, maybe trying to figure out something from a marketing standpoint. If you're going to send out 2,000 letters, it's going to run you, about $2,500, $3,000. Or, if you send out 4,000 postcards, it's going to run you $2,500 to $3,000. This would be something that would be an opportunity to give, especially if the direct mail marketing is not working, because a lot of folks are doing direct mail marketing nowadays, and it is getting saturated, Chris. So you have to have a piece that really, really stands out if you want to get a phone call from that person. And with Facebook, I'm just seeing, there's so many people on Facebook nowadays, and it's crazy, man. So this is a game changer for folks to take advantage of. And you guys have been using this for a while now. And like you said, saturation, where do you see this going? Where do you see this going in maybe the next 6 to 12 months? I know you don't have a crystal ball, Chris, so I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on it, but where do you feel? Do you think this is growing, or do you think this is something like, where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things that I mentioned that I would think. Number one is that, I mean, in the way that I'm teaching it, in my methodology, there's really nobody else teaching it. So I look at it from the standpoint of saturation. there's kind of there's a couple layers to it. And this is one of the reasons why the whole Facebook thing interested me, because when I was looking on forums and on the Facebook groups, people would say, like, has anybody tried Facebook? And some of them will say, well, no, it's just too complicated, so I'm going to go ahead and do direct mail. So the default is direct mail.
Right.
So as with anything, it's like the analogy of a car. You get in the car, you turn on the ignition, and you put it on drive, and it's a very simple process. But underneath the hood, there's a lot of things that happen there to make that very simple process. So there is a certain layer of complexity that is underneath the layer that I just described here, which I look at that not necessarily as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. Because unlike direct mail, where you can go in and just go to Mail House tomorrow and have a list and have an entire campaign go out and running, this is not the case here.
That's awesome.
So there's a certain amount of work, time, and effort, in order to be able to get up and running and to be able to have it operational. The other thing I think about is just that, this sets how can I say? I always think about foundational. What can you learn that is a foundational skill that you can then continue to use over the course of many years. So for me, one of the foundational skills that I learned early on was, how to do effective marketing, how to write direct response copy, because I did that and I use that skill in my real estate business. And so for me, I look at the Facebook also as a way for you to learn and understand, online advertising, because that's not going away. The direct mail is always going to be there. But having the ability of doing online advertising, I think, and understanding the nuances of that, I think is critical for anybody being in real estate investing. Facebook is always changing. The platforms are always changing. I always say that there's always a balance between opportunity and timing, right? Because direct mail, a couple of years ago was working great. And now, it's not so much. Cold calling was something that now is more mainstream. So the effectiveness of that, depending on we do some cold calling, and we have some lists that we call where people will say, I've already had 3 or 4 people call me this week, right? And some of those are like tax delinquent lists, and some of those other lists that you can just buy. So I think of it as, will everything last forever? Typically not. But I always think about timing and opportunity, right? Sometimes if the opportunity is there, you strike while it's hot, you take advantage of it, you make as much as you can. And if it all fizzles out, and because I don't have a crystal ball, it's always easier to ride that next wave with a stack of cash in your bank account, right? As you figure out the next thing, because there's always going to be a next thing, right? So that's kind of like my thought on the I don't have a crystal ball. I just think of it as, hey, it's a great opportunity now. Might as well take advantage of it. And I think Facebook is going to be around for a while. Things always change and transform. And I think that this gives you the ability to kind of get into online marketing, and you're going to have to always make adjustments, just like with any other strategy in real estate investing.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. You never know. Facebook could continue to be the way it is. I know they've changed up their ad platform quite a bit within the last few months. You never know. This could be something that could be used on LinkedIn. This could be something, I don't know if you've tested it on Instagram or not, but it could be something used on Instagram or YouTube. You never know. But for right now, Chris has got it dialed into where it's working right now on Facebook. And that's awesome. So will other platforms be something that people start testing out down the road? Maybe. I don't know. My thing is, I'm glad I got Chris on here, because I'm going to give this a try myself. I'm going to dive into what Chris has and start utilizing it here in the markets that we're doing business in, because I see the opportunity. I still believe this is such a great opportunity to get in on it. So, Chris, let me ask you this, man. We're getting to the time of the show to where we're winding down. I always ask this question to our experts, and I want to find out from you, what's a good book, or like a book that's been a game changer for you or changed your mindset, like maybe a self-help book, a entrepreneur book, business book. What would you say has been something maybe that's good that you would recommend to our folks?
I mean, the one book I always come back to is Dan Kennedy, who's a marketing guru.
Yep.
He wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Letter. And that was the first book I ever read on direct response marketing.
Nice.
And I always remember sitting down with that book as I wrote my first postcards and kind of looking at that book as a guide. So my recommendation to anyone is learning direct response marketing. is really important. And so I would recommend that book, Dan Kennedy, The Ultimate Sales Letter. And then if I would mention a second thing, a guy that I'm a fan of I'm a fan of Jordan Belfort.
Oh yeah.
Obviously he has some things that he did incorrectly, right? And so, but he has a couple of books out, and I mentioned him specifically because a lot of people underestimate the importance of sales and the importance of communication, because you could have the best marketing strategy, you could have the best way of generating sellers, but if you can't close the door, you're not going to close a deal.
That is true. That is true, man. And Jordan had a video not too long ago, because I used to think, oh man, well he was a scumbag. He did some really shady things back in the day. And then I started, really paying attention to him. And the dude he's actually he admits to his F ups. He admits to it. He takes ownership of it. And I like his purpose now, because he didn't really have a purpose before. And he said his purpose now is, it's his family, it's his kids. He's remarried now. Obviously, when everything was going down, him and his wife parted ways. But I really like his stuff. He's got some really, really great stuff that's really good with people. I like Dan Kennedy as well. How can you not like Dan Kennedy? He's got some really amazing things. If you don't know who Dan Kennedy is, I highly encourage you to look up his stuff. And two things here to wrap up the show. What's a great way for people to kind of find more information out about you, Chris? Maybe some of the stuff that you're doing with Facebook. And then second part is any parting words for our listeners.
You know what we could do is maybe we could set up a link on your site.
Okay.
And then you can provide the link. I don't know. I think you maybe we could figure out a link and then what I could do is I can give people a copy of one of the ads that I have that I run on Facebook. And then I also have a training that I have available that'll go into more deeper. Like I just went over the details. I have a training that I go into more detail, and also you can see screenshots of a variety of different things, or a lot of the things I talk about.
That would be awesome.
Maybe if you can put together a link and then include it in the show notes.
Yeah, I've got one for us. It's if folks want to get that information, that is awesome that you're going to give away one of the actual ads that you're using. So noflippingexcuses.com/Chico, and that's spelled CHICO. So noflippingexcuses.com/CHICO. So that's awesome, Chris. I appreciate you sharing that with our listeners.
Yeah, and my parting words, I think would be, I think focus, number one. It's very easy to go out. Many times people will give you, hey, here's 20 ways to find a deal. You're not going to do 20 of them. You're not going to have enough time in a day. And some of those are like, oh, you might get a deal here, you might get a deal there, but they're not consistent. So number one is I would focus on finding lead generation sources that you can attack consistently, especially if you're beginning. You can't attack 4 or 5 things. You got to focus on one thing. And, Facebook could be one of them. It could be other things, because there's direct mail, there's cold calling, whatever that may be. Focus on that specifically. And then the other thing is just don't underestimate sales, because getting better on the phone. I mean, you could be doing the exact same marketing you're doing right now, but if you could be better on the phone, speak better with sellers, have better dialogues, you could increase your results by not even spending any more money, just by being better on the phone. Because I've listened to some calls and from students, and I'm like, this doesn't sound too good. It's almost like watching like if you put a blindfold on me and you see me walking to I-95, right, trying to cross the highway, you're like, that ain't gonna end good, right?
Well, you bring up something here, Chris, and I want to kind of piggyback on it. I think a lot of folks, and we have students too, and we'll have them listen to us on the phone, then we'll listen to them on the phone, and it's just, I think they're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to just screw up on the phone. And once you get over that fear of, hey, you are going to screw up, you are going to make mistakes, then you could start just having conversations like Chris and I are just talking right now. This is how I talk when I'm on the phone with sellers. I have the same exact tone. I'm talking to folks, and Miriam, another good book, Chris, I don't know if you've read this, is was it never splitting the difference?
Never Splits the Difference.
Yeah, by Chris Voss.
Got that one. Yeah, I heard great reviews about that.
Good book. Highly recommended. On top of the other ones that Chris has recommended. You're not going to get perfect at sales. Nobody will be. But you can always, get your craft improved every single day. Talk to yourself in the mirror. I know it may sound a little goofy. That's what I did when I was just getting out of high school and I was selling knives. I would do presentations in front of the mirror to myself. So you just got to get in habits of getting yourself uncomfortable, get yourself comfortable being uncomfortable. So I think that's awesome. Awesome advice there, Chris, for your parting words, man.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate our time together. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Chris, it's been a pleasure. For folks, if you need anything whatsoever from us, Mike, myself, or anybody on the No Flipping Excuses team, feel free to reach out. It's support@jasonluchesi.com. Again, that's support@JasonLuchesi.com. I'd like to thank Chris again for coming on the show. Thank you so much, my man. It's been an awesome show. Tons of amazing information shared. For those of you listening, go flip a house. We will talk to you later. Take care. Bye now.